In talking with Lilek, and more importantly listening to her, I find connections with thoughts, principles and perspectives that are sometimes new, sometimes known to me, and I sense them coming together. By this I'm referring to the very natural combination of thought, memory, conceptualizations and practical experiences melding into a cohesive platform. I'm often inspired by these confluences because they allow me to address the multiple standpoints in novel ways. I can see new ideas formulate that allow me to either develop concepts for my own workshops and lessons, or simply to bring to a conclusion a thought process that hadn't yet been completed. The message is simpler though. We need to think about what is happening around us. We need to look about us to see how others are being affected by local and wider events. We need to reach out the hand of friendship and embrace the opportunity of helping one another. We also need to become more demanding of our societal leaders, whoever they may be. Thank you, Lilek, for your time again. Enjoy.
The podcast from Joanna and Mike is, I think it's really cool, and that is what I wanted to say.
Two and a mic. Lilek, I'm really happy to have you back for a third conversation. How have you been?
Hey, Zach, thanks. Well, I've been preparing a lot of wise stuff for this podcast. I hope people will appreciate. No, I'm looking forward to your very profound questions that I can answer humbly with my knowledge and experience.
Oh my God. All right. So no pressure on me then. Luckily, some of my questions are going to be particularly profound, but very much at the surface of things. We started talking about Earth Holder, not mission, but the community.
Exactly.
You educated me on that one in our previous episode. But also because we talked beforehand, you told me about some of the activities that you engage in. And I mean, let's talk about one in particular. This, is it called the Deep Time Walk?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, yeah. So the Deep Time Walk is very close to my heart. I got in touch with it through a Czech friend who's part of a pilgrims university. So they do pilgrimages with certain topics every year. And my friend, she was telling me about the Deep Time Walk, which is a walk through the history of the earth. And it is a very practical thing, and at the same time a very spiritual thing. And I mean, you know me a little bit, and you might have figured that I love this combination, like hands-on, but still not too materialistic or whatever. So it's very good. And at first I wanted to do it for XR. And in fact, I've never done it for the XR people, because I think there was not enough motivation from their side, and they didn't really know what it was. But I did it with my meditation group, and for other groups too. And so I might elaborate a little bit on what it is. So the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, more or less, and the walk is 4.6 kilometers long, which means that 1 meter equals 1 million years, which is like amazing, right? And so you literally walk through the history of the Earth from the beginning of the universe. Then you jump to the birth of our solar system and the Earth and the moon. And then you walk like there are certain stops that are, of course, picked, but those are very important developments that scientists have figured out, right? And so sometimes you walk 1 kilometer without anything really happening, like apart from evolutionary processes, which we don't know exactly how they happened. And then at the end, you figure like there is this it's called Cambric explosion, and everything happens very fast. And the last 20 centimeters are the entire history of humankind. And so you can see how little time we are on this earth, and how everything actually has evolved from that first beginning, as I was saying before, right? And that everything has led to this moment. And of course, it's not over. It's still going on. But for me, it was so eye-opening, again, in a very hands-on way, or I could experience this feeling of, oh fuck, the last 20 centimeters and we're fucking things up. We're fucking like kind of 4.6 billion years of evolution. We're fucking it up. And of course, the Earth will survive and something else will happen, but still all the amazing ecosystem, the bacteria, the animals and the plants and whatever has emerged from this great process is now in danger. And I thought, wow, this is a really nice way of helping people understand without being too missionary, like Earth Holder mission and stuff, but to make them experience it for themselves. And of course, through my way of guiding, I kind of help this, but I'm not telling them, listen, we're fucking things up and stuff. It's just like if it really works, if people are open, then they will have this kind of experience in one way or another.
Yeah, which is in itself, that introduction brings in so many questions. So first of all, for these types of sort of group, I'm not sure if it's the right term to say meditational experiences. It really is important to approach them with an open mind, to be willing to sort of intake the information and also to be influenced and affected by those around you. If you're somebody who is naturally skeptical, then you're not going to be able to completely appreciate the experience, are you?
Well, maybe not completely, but that's not my goal. If it's like 5% appreciation, it's more than 0% appreciation. I haven't done it with especially skeptical people. The danger is, as with everything that is kind of in the spiritual realm, that people stay in their head and they start analyzing and criticizing. And of course, then again, they're dissociated from the heart, what we call the heart, like this feeling and the emotion. And so I don't know if it works. It doesn't work completely, but maybe they would say, oh, I've gathered some interesting information. I didn't know that. And maybe that's their way of getting more into the topic. But of course, I wouldn't do it with a group of people who say that climate crisis is a bogus. Maybe that would be a challenge that's too high.
Yeah, a challenge too far, indeed. But I think it's because I like as you just said yourself as well, the spiritual and the practical, and there's something I want to come back to as well. Reading a book a few years ago about nudge politics, where you essentially make decisions or you kind of pass regulations within a legal system, but without introducing a new law, as a means of influencing collective behavior. So, for example, if you want to stop people from smoking, you put the price up significantly of cigarettes and so on. So that kind of thing, where you don't actually have to pass a law to influence that behavior. Within this book that I was reading, they talked about group dynamics, and I can't remember the exact terminology, but when you've got people who come together and they want to make a decision based upon a specific issue, the greater that collective is, the more emotional the decision becomes. And the kinds of decisions that are made essentially are greater than the sum of the passions of the individuals involved, because it's multiplied as a result of being such a collective thing. And I found that explanation to actually have a lot of spirituality to it, but because it's not considered in this a decision made in the spiritual realm, it wasn't represented as a spiritual thing. But I believe it to be similar because it's based upon the natural energies that are communicated between the people who are there in an unspoken manner. Is that something which could be perhaps related to some of the exercises that you do with the group?
I just want to paraphrase what I got from
Sure.
what you just said, because what I understand is that we have a connection, that there is a kind of connection that is not entirely mental or intellectual.
Yeah.
And that this is something that we need to connect with something deeper or higher, as you like to put it, and that this helps us to feel not only like I'm me, Lilek, you are Zach, we're having a conversation, but there's maybe some third, there's another dimension in the room. Like if we really, and this is something that happens when you just become still. Like usually I start my sessions with 1 minute of silence. Also the online sessions, especially, I tell people to come back to themselves and to come like to open up to the room, to the room online that they're in, because usually we're in our rooms. I'm in my room, you're in your room right now, but we're still in a room together. And to have that kind of awareness of the room and of myself in the room is something that already deepens everything and opens things up. And this is how I understand how this process could come to be, maybe. But this has to be guided. Like what this is why I try to one guy, he told me something very important when I did the deep time walk once, coming to your question. He said, well, I still feel I'm on this journey alone. And I said, oh, okay, but because we're not talking, usually it's a meditative walk, as you already put it correctly. So you don't speak because you want to be in that space. You want to be with yourself and your steps and the millions and millions and then billions of years that you're walking through, right? So you need a kind of stillness. And then I thought, okay, but how can I, when I do this with the group, how can I help the group still feel connected, especially for those who are not used to walking without talking? People in the Plum Village tradition or in other Buddhist traditions and maybe Christian traditions and other traditions, I don't know, but in spiritual traditions, they usually are used to being with each other in silence. It's not awkward. But how can I do that with a group who's not familiar with this kind of silent connection? And then I thought, okay, I'm going to tell them, okay, listen, we're a group now, we're 2023, but we're entering a spaceship now, and we're going back in time all together. And the next time when we jump will be at the beginning of the Earth 4.6 billion years ago, and jump. And so the whole group jumps, and this is at least an attempt to make them feel they're connected and they get out of the spaceship together. So they're living this story together, but at the same time, each person in their own very own way.
Yeah. It's people, I think, don't naturally lose sight of their own individuality simply because they are within a group. But I think this group, the shared dynamic, does serve to accentuate feelings. I'm kind of when I recall some of my yoga sessions, or even afterwards, some of my sort of active exercise sessions with the group. What I find is when I can see that people around me are engaged in coordinated activities, that impresses me. and it drives me forward through the pain to continue doing the exercise, if you know what I mean. Yeah, it's almost like I become automatically committed to the group activity, even though I recognize my own pain. Um, and yeah, I don't know if that's something perhaps similar, or if that's a part of the concept.
I'm not sure about that, but when you're in a blockade, or in a demonstration, I think this is also a process that's happening. You're an individual, but you're taking part in a group activity, and if it rains, or when it starts to rain, if you were alone, you would say, "Oh, fuck it, I'm going home." But if you're surrounded by thousands of people who are cheering, you might still think about it, but you might not want to go home directly. I took part with another friend of the Earthholder community in a Fridays for Future demo, and it was raining like hell, but we still did it, like we put up our umbrella, and we marched through the rain and got our feet wet, and yeah, we still did it. I would have never done that alone, and I think that's a thing, also a social thing. You can explain some good and some bad mechanisms in human behavior with it. And I'm sure, Zach, there's something going on in our brains, but I'm not a neuroscientist, although I find neuroscience very intriguing. And there are retreats about neuroscience and spirituality in Plum Village. There have been for the past years. So to bring that together, I was talking about that overlap or that intersection, right? And so I'm sure there's something going on in your brain when you see others going through maybe some pain too. You're like, okay, it's worth it. I won't give up. We're in this together, And
Yeah,
in a way, maybe coming back to our last podcast, maybe that's exactly what we need now. Not maybe. I was talking about feeling this connection and telling ourselves that we're in this together. And I think we need the spirit. We need the spirit to go through the pain, also the pain of change, because it's painful for people to change. But we need to tell ourselves we're in this together, and really also see it. I think we see a lot of discriminating factors, and of course we see rich people who can afford everything and who get richer and richer. And I'm not naive. I'm not saying this is not true and this doesn't influence or shouldn't influence us. But at the same time, there's still masses and millions and billions of people who are on the same level in this together. And if we understood this better, as you said, we need to tell our politicians, listen, we want this, but not in an aggressive way, but kind of saying, okay, look, we're behind you. And this is not happening right now. It's very sad, but it also has its reasons.
yeah, sure. And we've touched on some of these reasons, and I'm sure that in the coming sessions we'll talk about a few more of these sessions, these issues. And again, though, it's cool because you do come back to this connection between the spiritual world and practicality. Because a lot of people don't often see that. They kind of consider these to be opposites. Whereas with what you're saying, these are actually complementary factors. They work together. They bring together two statuses which allow people to be able to see things in perhaps a different light.
Yeah, one of my other Earthholder friends, in his Signal profile, he has got that status phrase, and it's in German. I have to translate it into English. Doing or acting is like wanting, but it's more deep shit or something, like, and I love it. It's like usually you want something or you think about something, but then this is the thought action gap, or how they call it. There's a term coined for it, which is our biggest enemy right now in climate change or climate crisis, and the injustice that's connected with it. And we think about it, we think about changing, we know, but like acting accordingly that's a deep shit part, like, or the real shit. And so I think it's nice to have some kind of mantra and some kind of saying that you can come back to. And I totally forgot your question.
That's okay.
Tell me again, please.
It's about how complementary spirituality and
Right,
practical things are. Yeah.
right. Yeah, the thing is that maybe I'm putting it maybe that's too shallow. I don't know, but it isn't. Like if you come back to your breathing, which is one of the most profound and basic exercises in my tradition, then this is something very practical. It's something very physical, but at the same time, you will feel after 3 deep breaths that something has changed also in your mind. And this is, I think, exactly when you can experience this connection between the mental and the physical, and also maybe the spiritual. As soon as we have more space in our mind, we feel relieved, we feel free, and we can look more like clearly. And I think, yeah, it is looking beyond and at the same time in depth. My practice is sometimes just to see how things are connected. I was talking about interbeing, like when I look at the tree outside the window, it's a birch tree. I can see the leaves, but I can also see how the wind moves the leaves. If I look more deeply, I can see, at least in my mind, I know I can see all of the insects that are living on this tree, that are interacting with this tree. I can see the roots of the tree reaching deep down into the soil. And when I look into the soil, I can at least imagine all of I can also see the cables and the cellars of the buildings around. So I can see so many things that are interconnected. And this for me is a spiritual view. It's called deep looking in my tradition, because you don't look at things on the surface, but you go deeper and you go into the interconnectedness that those things or beings, we as human beings or the plants, whatever, have with the environment, which is then again not environment anymore, but it's just one big net of life.
Yeah, and this is also, I believe, expressed in sort of many yogic traditions, is it not, where you kind of meditate and you take time out to consider actually where you are, or you put yourself within the situation. In some of the yoga sessions that I have partaken in, we tend to be somewhere by a water body, where there is, I suppose, either grass or sand, which we can feel between our fingers, the wind, and so on. Maybe a bit of moisture here or there. Just to kind of put us into contact with a certain sense, and also a few natural elements. That there seems to be always this coming together of these things. It's perhaps part of a similar structure of beliefs or approaches.
I have no idea. I haven't
Okay,
done it yet.
wonderful. Okay, cool.
Uh,
But I also wanted to speak about this, how people perceive these kind of meditationary practices, and the fact that they you raise, as soon as you say the word spirit or spirituality, like the eyes go up, oh God, here we go again. It's and so on. For a start, why do people do that? Is that just pure ignorance, do you think, or do we see weakness or inability within ourselves, and so we don't want to approach what we don't know?
I think we are afraid. On the one hand, we're afraid of this thing, and we're afraid of power, because spirituality has been in our culture very much linked to the church, and the church as an institution of power, as an institution of mm, like abuse also in a way. And it's taken away the spiritual aspect. And even before, of course, I mean, people went to church because they believed that they were sinners and that they would be going to hell if they didn't. But this spiritual aspect in our own Christian tradition has become so marginalized. And now it's coming back, that we're not so much, that church as an institution is weak, they're opening up, at least the Lithuanian churches especially. And so that people have a kind of wider understanding usually. And then on the other hand, there's this very crazy esoteric branch that people associate spirituality with. I think when you say religion, people go like, oh, church. When you say spirituality, people go like, oh my God, chakras and auras and whatever, which is for me, is fine for me. But it is a very narrow view because people don't really know, and they put a label on it. So this labeling is it's a very limiting factor, and it keeps people from really experiencing it themselves. And what I see in Plum Village is that when people come, they're not Buddhists. They're maybe on some kind of search, they're maybe in some kind of crisis, or they are just curious, or someone forced them to go there. And then they experience the community and the peace and the peacefulness of this place and of the people there. And then it creeps into them like in a good way. And they start feeling more peaceful or more connected with their own emotions, with their suffering, but also with their joy. And they can share it with others. And this is a profoundly spiritual experience without them really knowing. And then when they look back, they're like, wow, this was so impactful. And I've really experienced things that I've not expected to experience, and I feel very connected. So usually community helps with spiritual practice. This is why I'm talking about it so much, that we need community for spiritual practice. And that we don't have that here so much, right? We have our own spiritual beliefs, and I think it's great that we can be so free. But at the same time, we're a little lost, because you asked me, how is it, like, why are people so afraid, or why, are they rolling their eyes when you say spiritual? And sometimes it's also important to find a different word for it, just to avoid this label, because sometimes it's not like, okay, listen, guys, I'm having this workshop and we're doing a very spiritual thing. We're going to breathe through our throat chakra for 1 minute. I will have lost all participants by then. Okay. I'm just like, hi, I'm Lilek. I'm a blah, blah, blah. And we're doing this. And to come back to ourselves and to the group, we're doing 1 minute of silence. Just breathe and feel your body. It's also how you wrap it, it can be a great thing, but if you wrap it in a more, I don't know, esoteric kind of paper, then many people will say, nah.
Yeah. So once again, essentially the unfortunate consequences of prejudice. But there we have it. It's in many ways, what you're saying is also interestingly quite deep, but at the same time simple. For people to be able to accept it, they just simply have to say, I want to experience it. They simply have to say, I want to give it a go. They simply have to go and do it. They simply have to take these deep breaths and open their eyes and open their minds. And that at that point, that shallow or simple exercise is the doorway to something far deeper, and that which brings joy and peace, and which is not beyond the reach of anyone. We can all access it.
Yes, we do. And in a way, what you say is true and false at the same time, because when I look at it from a Zen perspective, you say this very simple exercise is for something much deeper. In Zen, I would say no, there is nothing deeper. There's just this, and this is it. The breath in this moment is the most spiritual thing that you can experience, or whatever we're talking about, spiritual, blah, blah, blah. Let's say it is the truth, or the here and the now that you can experience. And this is all that is there, and there's nothing that goes deeper or higher or whatever than this. So you don't add anything, you don't take anything away. And this is the big art, at least in Zen practice, which is also something that I'm trying. And it's nothing really to achieve because it is from moment to moment, like from step to step. And so, yeah, it is funny because we always have the ultimate dimension where there is maybe something like liberation or peace and ultimate blah love. But then we also have the historical dimension where you sit on a chair and you just breathe and you're alive. And there is, of course, this intersection of the two. So yeah, but maybe in the next part we can talk a little bit more about other Earthholder practices and what we can do also to be active and to be open and change something.
Yeah, which is exactly a great place to leave it. A bit of a cliffhanger there, Lilek. So thank you for that. But yeah, again, thank you very much for all of your explanations and also I think guidance. I think sometimes people go to certain kinds of events expecting to receive information that is going to tell them exactly how they have to do things, and really it's not about that. It's about adapting what they currently do in certain ways to start a journey towards I hesitate to say enlightenment, but in some kind of improvement to where they currently are. But it doesn't always have to come from somewhere else, as in, ask yourselves and then see what comes, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's maybe enlightenment is a term that many people cannot connect with. Even for me, it's sometimes, what is enlightenment? I think I like to think of it as a change in consciousness. It's like that change that we desperately need as humankind to understand what's going on and how we can stop it, or how we can just try other ways of handling the situation and each other and the world. So we need that shift. And I think that spiritual traditions should work towards that, or should help with their practices in a way that people are open to receive it. As I just explained, if I say, hey, we're going to do a transcendent theta healing meditation, some people will scream yay, and many people will scream nay. So I just try to offer what I think is healing and good and connecting to the earth and to people in a way that people can receive it.
Thank you, Lilek. And speak to you soon. Mike.
Bye.
Two and Mike. Two and Mike.